Welcome back to our ISSNAF story series. Today we are with Professor Giorgio Einaudi, one of the original founders of ISSNAF. Benvenuto, Giorgio.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's start by announcing your recent nomination to the Honorary Board of ISSNAF. Congratulations and many thanks from the whole ISSNAF community.
Thanks to you. I have something to do with all ISSNAF, so I'm honored to be.
And we'll talk about it indeed. So Professor Giorgio Einaudi was born in Torino, but studied physics at University of Pisa. He was then professor at University of Pisa, at the Scuola Normale, at University of Florence, at University of California in Irvine, and most recently at George Mason University. His research activity is in plasma physics with astrophysics applications. All the while, Professor Einaudi was also scientific attaché at the Embassy of Italy in Washington for 8 years, starting in 2001. He then was senior advisor to the Italian Ministry for Environmental Land and Sea. And more recently, he was the scientific director of the Foresight project within the National Research Council of Italy. So with such a curriculum, it is a challenge to choose what to focus on for this short interview. But let's start with ISSNAF. So ISSNAF was founded in 2007 when you were a scientific attaché at the embassy. So can you tell us about its beginning and your role in it?
Well, the beginning was actually when I arrived in Washington in 2001, and I realized that it was one of the big issue was brain drain. We have to bring back Italians in Italy. And I always have been opposed to this idea. I think that people go where there are the right conditions. So to bring back Italians in Italy, we have to create in Italy the right conditions. It's not only a matter of a law, but it's a matter of work conditions. And so I talked a lot with the ambassador, Salleo, who has been a big supporter of the idea, saying, look, we have to do something different. Leave the Italians where they are. And in this country, they are in permanent position, not only the university and academia, but in industries. And try to organize them. Well, all of them have a link with Italy. Let's try to organize them in order to have them helping Italy, staying here, which is much better than bringing some of them back. And there has been a big fight with the minister at the time, in the foreign ministry in Rome. The ambassador was very supportive, and we started to try to know the Italians. At the time, at the embassy, I think there were about 100 people known by the embassy, including they were not knowing that a few hundred yards from the embassy was living one of the possible, and in fact, future Nobel Prizes, Riccardo Giacconi. So I started this with a database on the website of the embassy, and the whole process went on for some years. It was a long work with a lot of help by the consuls in Boston, in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. And at a certain point, we had a database with about 4,000 people known and about 800 people who have been signing into the database, giving the agreement to publish their curriculum. So that was, say, 2005. And so the idea was at that point to make this effort more stable. And the idea was to create a foundation, a non-profit foundation, which is ISSNAF. So I made about 35 phone calls to have the founding members agreeing to become founding members. And then a board of directors were created and the foundation was created. And that was the beginning in 2007. Then we had, at the time, a number of meetings with hundreds of scientists and scientists, and not only scientists, but academian people attending. And that's how ISSNAF was created.
And related to that, multilateral partnerships, scientific and technology collaborations between North America and Italy have been a lifetime commitment of yours. So in this context, what is, in your view, the most important responsibility and opportunity of ISSNAF members and of the Italian diaspora in general?
Well, again, I think that most of the Italians who are in the US have links with Italy. They invite students, they have scientific collaborations, but the biggest responsibility of ISSNAF, in my opinion, would be to try to organize, to create something that is not a one-to-one relationship, but to create a community that actually is the ISSNAF community, that to which the Italians who want to have a strong relationship with the US can ask for help. So that is not easy. It's not easy because the Italians are individualists, so it's not different. It's not easy to create such a context. But that is what ISSNAF should try to do, trying to raise money to create fellowships and occasions where those occasions are not there. And there are a lot of situations where students would like to spend time in the US to have an experience. And I must say that you have had an interview with Giorgio Bellettini. The experience of Giorgio with the hundreds of students that he has been bringing to Chicago, I talk with a lot of these people. That experience have changed their mind, their life. I mean, they really gave an input that has been essential in the following. So that, I think, is the biggest responsibility. The other one is that we are thinking and talking and discussing about reforming the university and the research system in Italy. Well, most of these people of ISSNAF have an experience of managing research and universities, and they can be very helpful in giving, inputs. I'm not saying that we have to copy the American system. That I don't like it, so I don't think it's a good idea, but there are lots of things that happen in the US that could be transferred in Italy with some help.
So you emphasize the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration between scientists, policymakers, and industry managers to address important and socially relevant problems. And this was a precise, I believe, one mission of the Foresight Project, of which you were director. But you also commented on how difficult that is. Can you comment on the lessons learned and on the positive or negative outcomes on the Foresight Project?
Well, the Foresight Project, actually, I started to talk and to think to the Foresight Project when I was in the US. And in fact, for a while, I've been deputy director of an institute that is the ISGP, Institute of Science and for Global Policy, created by my good friend, George Atkinson at the University of Arizona, that wanted to do this exactly, the Foresight. The idea comes from the fact that unfortunately, research today is supported with grants that last at most 3 years. And so the horizon of the research is too short to do a good research. And in fact, most of the research today is actually an improvement of epsilon of what we know. Because it's difficult, it's impossible not to have a long-term vision of the plans and the projects. So and this is a responsibility of the scientific community. So the idea is with Foresight Project is to put together a number of important scientists and ask them not what they are doing and what how good they are, but to use their expertise to make a medium long-term foresight on where the research should go having in mind social problems. So the main points refer to medicine, health, food, energy, transportation, environment. So what should we know, and we don't know at the moment, that would help in making technological and scientific progresses to try to solve or to start solving those very difficult social problems. The format of the Foresight project workshops is very interesting. We put together a number, 10, 15 outstanding scientists on a certain issue, very interdisciplinary, so with different expertise, and to discuss for a couple of days where the research should go. The beginning is interesting. Nobody understands each other. There are big fights, and then after a dinner, a good glass of wine, and 2 days of discussion, usually, in my experience, it's possible to arrive to a consensus on a medium-long term meaning 10, 20, 50, 25, 30 years, which is not something that should not be applied. I mean, it is a plan that we can start today to get there in 20 years. So it's not something that is far away and then bye-bye. So I think that we had a good success with a very poor forces that we had at the CNR, but we have been producing a number of reports that are still read and somehow can have an impact. Of course, the following of that would be to put together the scientists and the policymakers, public and private, to have a discussion with the policymakers. And that should help not wasting money. I'm not giving you a list that I have in mind of efforts that have been very expensive in the past 20 or 30 years, of big experiments, big research projects that have been a failure, and it was obvious at the beginning that we are not going in the right direction. But they were sponsored by some important, with the right friendship, scientists, and that is not a way of determining the future of science and research and technology. So this is what we have been doing, and that is now stopped, has been stopping with COVID, and then it's not going on at the moment anymore. But I hope to start again soon.
And you said it is difficult to involve in the long term these players, the scientists, the industry managers, and policymakers for lack of time, visibility, etc. Should we rethink societal and career incentives to encourage long-term interdisciplinary collaborations?
Yes, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult because the research is organized in a certain way. Actually, I am in a technical committee of the Italian Agency for European Research, and we are suggesting European Commission to use Foresight to determine the projects, the calls for proposals. If you look at the European Commission, European Commission projects, many of the calls are old, are things that have been already done, and are determined not by a process of foresight. So I know a lot of people who are actually using the money when they are winners to do the things that are not in the proposal, because what they have stated in the proposal that they asked for, the money, already been done. Yeah, it should be adopted, the Foresight method, by governments, by those who are giving the money to research, and that is private and public.
Your research is in plasma physics with astrophysics applications. Can you tell us about some of the recent applications in astrophysics that you have worked on, and what are you most excited about and most worried about also regarding future directions in your field?
Well, actually, you said astrophysical application. I worked mostly on the sun. The sun is a very interesting, wonderful laboratory that is close enough to have some good observations with the resolution that allows to look to have observation that it must be confirmed and must confirm the theoretical results. In astrophysics, many times there are wonderful theoretical results that cannot be, confirmed by observations because the resolution is not enough good. So mostly I worked on the sun, and mostly I worked on the solar corona, that is the external atmosphere of the sun, because there is a very interesting phenomenon there, that is the fact that the atmosphere is hot, is much hotter. Without any local phenomena, the temperature going away from a source of energy should decrease. In the sun increases up to millions degrees. And I think that we have now a good explanation of what the reason why the corona is hot. And there are two interests in that. One is to understand why the corona is hot, but also that I think that we have been able to understand better the behavior of a plasma under the conditions of turbulence that are typical of the corona. If you ask me about what I'm worried, well, I'm worried on the fact that plasma physics, not astrophysical plasma physics, is not going in the right direction. There has not been enough foresight. Everybody talks about fusion. Everybody thinks that the fusion will be the future source of energy for the Earth. When I was a student, the people were saying, well, in 30 years we will have a fusion. Now I'm retired, and we are talking about 40 years from now. There has been bad choices. Now there is a big propaganda about the fact that the fusion energy will be in the net in a few years. I strongly believe that that is not true. It's a way to raise money. And the problems that are there are also due to a bad plan, a bad pathway that the fusion research has been doing. So I'm worried about that more than on astrophysical applications.
I see. I usually ask, what do you most enjoy when you go back to Italy? But since I think you now live mostly in Italy, I'll ask you, what do you most enjoy when you come back to the United States?
Well, back in the 70s, so at the beginning of the 80s, I was in University of California, Irvine, and I could have stayed there. We decided not to stay for a number of reasons, including the experience of my brother, who now is died, but was American. And after 20 years of America, came back for a year to Italy, of course, without being able to adapt to the Italian work conditions, and going back to the US. So that I said, maybe that he was happy in the US, but not completely happy, and which was the case. So I had the occasion and the opportunity and the luck to be able to commute, because at the time in the 80s, when I was young, I was at the Scuola Normale, where the teaching is very easy. It's not something that must be done continuously. The students are very few and excellent. And so I was able to spend a lot of time in California, and I was going back and forth. And so I decided to do that and not to stay in the US. At the time, I was happy to go to the US for the work conditions, for the salary. And I was happy to go back to Italy for the people. I don't think that I could live in the US other than in 5 cities. For my personal character, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, and Washington. But nobody can assure me that I was able to spend all my career in those cities. Actually, one of the best places at the time was Boulder, Colorado in my field, or Huntsville, Alabama. And I couldn't think to stay there. Actually, I spent three months in Boulder, and I thought that leaving that I was going back to civilization. So that was at the time. Now, I think that in Italy, things have been changing. It's not, the society has been very frustrated. So there is not that friendship, that the opening that was used 50 years ago. And on the other hand, in the US, things have been improving. So at the time, now I'm happy when I'm here. I'm happy when I'm in the US. By the way, I have a son in the US, so I'm also happy to go to visit him. Are very different characteristics. And again, I think that for an European, with my mentality and my education, it would be very difficult to spend a lot of time in a little town in the middle of nowhere.
But is there one thing?
Huh?
Is there one thing you're looking forward to doing or seeing when you come back to the United States?
Oh, I have some friends, not many Americans, a lot of friends, but not many Americans, because one of the things that when I was talking about society, arriving in Irvine, everybody, oh, hello, nice to see you, come to dinner, and that, bye-bye. I was staying 6 months there without any other invitation or so. So I have some good friends, which I love to see. I love to stay in LA, in the places, New York, LA, Washington. I spent 8 wonderful years in Washington, so I'm glad when I go. But my character is that when I move, I'm happy. So, you know, it's something that is very personal.
What piece of advice would you give to a young Italian researcher in your field?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult because I think that if it's possible for family and personal reasons, I would try to go, as I was saying at the very beginning, where I feel comfortable working well. I think that the working conditions are essential to arrive to good results and to be happy. And I think that many of the Italians who are in the US are there because of the working conditions are different. Look, I talk with a lot of medical doctors. And why are you here? And the Italian medicine was at the time not so bad. And also now, I mean, we have some trouble, but and 80% of them answered because in Italy we don't do research in medicine. Because I had the opportunity to do what I was dreaming to do, becoming a medical doctor. So that is, I think, the suggestion. Try to go where there are the right conditions. Of course, the boundary conditions. I mean, how comfortable I feel in a place is also very important. Unfortunately, doing that, that's why I was laughing at the question, because that is the right conditions are very difficult in Italy. I tell you a story. I mean, I had an excellent student, absolutely excellent, completely crazy, but absolutely excellent. By the way, I have not a single student of mine in Italy at the moment. He went to California, to San Diego, and then that was in the middle of 90s. We had the opportunity to use our money to give fellowships. They were the assegni di studio. So I called him. I said, Roberto, look, I have the opportunity to have a fellowship for you. And he didn't even ask the money, the salary, that was very low. And he asked, which are the perspectives? And I said, okay, stay where you are. Because unfortunately, I have the money for 2 years, 3 years, and then I don't know. And then you have to go through concorsi that are the worst aspect of Italian university and research. So I cannot tell you anything. I mean, the perspective for a guy that is 27, 28, 29, 30, now they are also 35 or 36, are essential. And in Italy, we don't have the conditions to give sure perspectives to the young people. That is something that makes so difficult to keep the good researchers in Italy. I think this is my idea. Then there is the salary, of course. He was making 4 times what I was offering him. But it's not that the key point. I don't think that is the key point. It's not only a matter of money. It's a matter of having the right conditions. Yeah.
What do you hope to achieve in the next years as an honorary member of ISSNAF?
Well, I didn't think about it because actually I left in 2010, and then I didn't worry and I didn't do anything until Cinzia. Well, actually, Cinzia and Rika asked me to do something to help them. In fact, we have now an agreement with the University of Pisa. I did I did something, but not much lately. I must say that when in the first 3 years of ISSNAF, there has been a big success, popular success, that was somehow seen by the number of people that were connecting to the website. Look, in 2009, 2010, we arrived to have 1,200 people at the same time looking at the website. It was a source of information of Italian, American news, scientific, academic, and not only that, research results and so on. I think that is something that was due to the wonderful work done by Marina Santilli, who I want to mention because she was essential in the first 2 or 3 years of ISSNAF. I think that is the website. I'm not a social guy, so using only social tools, I'm not enthusiastic. I think that is something that means try to raise money and to have somebody who can do it. Of course, I'm not asking a person to do that for free and just on Sunday. Is something. So I think that the big achievement of ISSNAF at the moment would be to be able to have a budget that allows to do things that I think everybody has in mind. I'm not sure that I can contribute to that, but I will try, because I think that is one of the key points that really could make ISSNAF strong enough and visible, because the visibility is essential in Italy and in the US. It's easier to have visibility in the US because of the, all the members are in the US. So it's only a matter of contacting and somehow involving the Italian scientists and academician in ISSNAF. In Italy, you must show something, and it's not easy. But I'm optimistic, definitely.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered, Giorgio, that you'd like to share with the community?
I think that you had the right questions. I'm not sure that I've been exhaustive in my answers. So it's up to you if you think that there is something more that you want to extract from me. I try to be fast, so I don't know whether I've been successful. Usually they say that I'm not fast, but that is something that people say.
You are very effective in your answer.
I don't believe it. No, I think that I hope that this interview can help to attract the people. I must say one other thing that has been very useful at the beginning, that was the meetings. I remember among all the meetings from in all big cities, one meeting or two meetings in Boston. In the first meeting, there was a debate, and there were 150 people there. A debate about Italy-US relationship, and the three speakers were Modigliani, Nobel Prize winner, who was an incredible, wonderful guy, and Emilio Bizzi, that you know, and Federico Capasso, that is professor of Harvard. That was something interesting. That was attracting the people to come. And
Who organized those meetings? Who organized those meetings?
That meeting was organized, I think, by ISSNAF. I'm not sure ISSNAF was already there, organized by the embassy and by the general consul. At the time in Boston, there was an incredibly good general consul that did a wonderful job. But the idea was to put together the Italians who were in Boston, in the academia and in the industries, and to inform them that there has been an effort, there was an effort going on to organize a network and organize, you know, these people. And then a second meeting in Boston, again, there were 200 people, involving all the important people you can imagine in Boston, and there are many. And that was organized by ISSNAF with the consul. Debating what each person could do, could contribute to the success of ISSNAF. That were moments. There was a meeting in Washington when actually ISSNAF was presented the first time at the embassy, with, you know, the big room in the embassy was full, and there were people coming on their own from all over the US. We had a meeting in LA at UCLA, but we had a lot of in San Francisco, a lot of meetings. And I always had the impression that debating and discussing what is the ISSNAF goal and what each person can do to contribute to achieve that goal is key. I mean, is something that cannot be substituted by Zoom, I mean, must be done in person. So of course, that is something that requires effort, time. And so I understand that it's difficult. But I think that is something that could be very useful. Above all, now that are the chapters, that I don't think they are so organized each other. They are not linked each other much. But after all, there are chapters all over the US, so that can be done more or less everywhere. But again, the problem is the time, I think. Time and money, but it's not only, so that is not a matter of money, it's a matter of time. So if I can contribute to you know, make ISSNAF stronger, I would be very happy. And I'm glad that there are young people that like you that are spending their time for helping ISSNAF. So thanks.
Well, thank you. That was an interesting and very important last point. And thank you very much for your time, Giorgio.
Thank you very much.